My guest today is Sara Zafar. She is a family law attorney in Kansas, and she has a background fighting human trafficking and abuse. She's taken a really interesting path to get where she is today. Her firm is very new, but they've enjoyed success basically from day one. This is how to start and run a law firm. I'm Mark Lyda. Let's dive in. Okay, my guest today is Sara Zafar, who is a proud graduate of the University of Kansas, both undergrad and for law school. After law school, she worked at Kansas Legal Services as an attorney and later at the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, and then at the Wichita State Center for Combating Human Trafficking. She also worked at the Franklin Law Office of Counsel and is now the founding partner as of June 2025 of Campbell Zafar LLC, which provides legal services to clients in family law, protection orders, and education law, following with her experience, obviously. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's start with the origin story of the firm. How'd you get the idea for wanting to do it? When did you first think about doing it? Tell us about what made you take the leap.
Well, my law partner, Christy Campbell, and we both graduated in 2008. So we're kind of the same level of experience. And basically, we were both of counsel at Franklin Law Office, which is a small firm here in Wichita. It was a solo practitioner. And then we both came on as of counsel, which is, fancy for contract. Basically, we did that for almost 4 years. We started in August of 2021. And then somewhere about a year ago-ish, we decided that, hey, we can do this, we could, this seems like we've learned enough about how the business works. We've learned about billing because, both of us came from the nonprofit public sector before that. And so there wasn't true billing that was happening. And so we learned about that. We learned kind of how the business side of things worked by being of counsel, getting that opportunity to do it in a relatively safe environment. And then we just decided to take that leap. We started having some conversations and we decided, we can do this. We are both experienced. We have done this a long time. We do know what we're doing, imposter syndrome notwithstanding, but, we know what we're doing. So we decided to go ahead and look into what it was going to take and just made that decision. So June of this year, June of 2025 is when we opened.
Well, congratulations. That's amazing. So we're recording this just after Thanksgiving. So you're several months in.
Yeah.
It's interesting, by the way, how seeing something done sort of demystifies it for you. Right. I think a lot of people, maybe they're like an associate at a law firm and they think they could never do it because they never really see how the law firm is run. But when you're closer to the action because you're working for a solo and you see what they have to deal with, it demystifies it for you.
Absolutely.
I remember I used to work way back in the day. I worked for the governor and I remember seeing him do his governor things and thinking, I could do that, which was totally untrue. But in your case, when you're watching a solo manage their practice and you think, hey, it's not totally unattainable for me, I could do that. So
right.
Have you found that to be, you're several months in, have you found that to be the case? I mean,
yes.
Did it surprise you or is it what you expected?
Both. There's a lot that we expected because we kind of knew some of the ins and outs of that, but there was a lot we just really didn't know. And so we have learned a lot through this process, just doing it, getting in there, being like, especially just the account side of things. We don't have a bookkeeper yet. We're not there. Eventually, yes. But right now we're just managing our books ourselves. And so even just today, for example, we're sitting here and running the various reports that need to be done and our cash flow and our accounts receivable and all the things, just learning what those things are and what that means and how that applies to what we need to do and how much money we have to have in our operating account and which bills are coming out. We have to pay the internet bill and things like that. Right. Just how does that work? So we have learned a lot about that. And we really couldn't have done it without the help of my husband, who is basically our operations manager. He has been managing all of at the beginning, it was meeting with the insurance guy, meeting with the bank, meeting with the graphic designer. He built
Mm.
our website. We had all those meetings coordinated. He ran all that, he scheduled it and allowed us to just do the work side of things while he managed those logistics pieces for us. So that helped considerably.
So cool. Yeah, and it looks great, by the way. I'm looking
Thank
at it
you.
right now. Your
Thank
website looks
you.
great.
Yeah, there was a lot of thought that went into that. There's a lot of the colors and the significance to sexual assault and domestic violence awareness, trying to tie
Mm.
that in. And also just we really liked those colors for us. They're a little bit different from some of the other, a lot of law firms are, as we discovered, there's a lot of navy and brick red and gray and different kind of very sort of calming colors, but we wanted something that was that same vein, but much more our
Yeah.
personality.
I really love that. And I think that's a big part of starting a firm is like not all law firms have to have that same personality. When you start your own, you're free to have it be a reflection of yourself.
Yes. And we really wanted to embrace that. And so this is ours. Let's make it ours.
How else is your firm a reflection of yourself and your values and your personality?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it, like our front facing is basically our website. We don't have any social media. We could. I mean, there are other small firms, solo small firms that do that. That's a lot of work. And we
Yeah.
haven't, it hasn't really been necessary for building business because, we were able to sort of carry over the business that we had under our contracts. And so that was nice because that helped, there was a client base already there, but
Ni-
word of mouth has been very helpful as well. So that's also something, just referrals from other firms. I mean, there are a handful of other firms that I think we all just refer to each other all the time because we can't even take all the cases that are coming through our door right now.
Wow.
There's a need for it and not enough attorneys, but it's not a bad problem to have on our side because that means that we can be confident that we're going to have work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a
Yeah.
wonderful problem to have.
But yeah,
This podcast is for people who are like have recently taken the leap or they're trying to get it going or they're thinking about taking the leap. So where do you see the most demand?
oh gosh. Okay. So we specialize in family law. I mean, that's what we mostly do. There's on our website, you can see there's some other practice areas that we do. Protection orders here in Kansas fall under family law in a weird way. That's a separate area, but they are often overlapping. And then, quite a few of the others, the estate planning frequently stems out of our family law work, but that's the majority of what we do. We are focused heavily on alternative dispute resolution. So, mediation, what we call domestic conciliation, which is like mediation plus, investigation recommendation, that sort of thing. We both are qualified as guardian ad litem. So, we represent children's best interests in family court proceedings and a number of other sort of areas that stem out of that. But I think there's been an increase in demand in estate planning recently, but family law is just off the charts. I mean, there is so much need for attorneys, good attorneys who do family law, who know the system, who know the courts. And in Kansas, it is extremely localized. So basically, your jurisdiction is going to have its own set of rules and attorneys who practice in those areas. And it's like that all over the state. So in Wichita, where I live, the demand is family law, basically.
This is something that I preach to anyone who will listen, but with all of the technology out there, obviously, and social media and the new ways that business promote themselves, really still the most reliable way to get business is through relationships, and it sounds like that's what you have found so far. So how do you know the people who are referring cases to you? And it sounds like you're referring cases to them in sort of a round robin. Is it bar association? Is it law school? How do you know them?
Mostly through the bar association. We have a family law committee. And so a lot of us, but not all of us, are included on that. Honestly, it is because we practice so much together, even when it's opposing. We were on opposite sides of the case, we
Yeah.
have to work well together. That is something that the Wichita bar is known for, even in the state, is how collegial everybody is. We get along. I'm not going to say that everybody gets along all of the time, and we certainly get frustrated with each other, but we get along really well. You have to. I think that is the best way to advance your client's case is if you're working well with the opposing counsel as opposed to just being adversarial. It just doesn't get you as far. Our judges like to see it. So that helps too in terms of making sure that we are, just doing all the things that we need to do to advance our cases, our clients' interests. And so I mean, this is we joke about it, but it's really like we are very friendly. People get along. We are nice to each other. We are thoughtful. We are considerate. Somebody has a medical emergency. We're not going to throw a fit if, we have to continue a hearing or, if there's some other issue, we're not going to be jerks about it. Like we're going
Yeah.
to, because if you're in that position, that's what you need to. And we all kind of know that. And, there's going to be some who don't fall under that, but the vast, vast, vast majority of attorneys who do family law in this area, we all know each other. We all get along. So when it comes to referrals, we've got some attorneys who, when we just very first started, even when we were contract and just picking up family law again, we were getting a ton of referrals from some of these same firms, these same folks, because the business is there and they know that we know what we're doing because both of us came from
Yeah.
that legal services background. They train you very
Mhm.
well in that environment and you get right into the courtroom right away. So, we know what we're doing. And so they know that. And so they will refer to us. And we do the same. Like when we have clients who, I mean, we can't take the case, we are just at capacity, or it's not quite our area, there's some specialization that really requires somebody else's expertise. We know who that person is. We're going to refer you because it's the right thing to do. It also is just good business, honestly, to have that good network of people. And we genuinely do get along with each other. You could be adversaries in the courtroom or on Zoom, which is a lot of what we do still, and still be able to go out afterwards, socialize, enjoy each other's company. You keep the professional work separate from the social.
Not everybody can do that, but I think that it's one of the greatest compliments you can get is a referral from a former opposing counsel because they know your work really well and they have managed to not to come through the process without hating you so much that they wouldn't refer a case to you.
Right.
Unless it's a terrible case and they're doing it to punk you. Okay, so question for you is that this question applies to family law, but litigation in general.
Sure.
It's much better for business to do litigation. In my opinion, it's the demand is there and then cases are ongoing as opposed to the one-off nature of some transactional work.
Sure.
Or estate planning. The downside is sometimes the stress level can be higher as well. So
Sure.
how do you manage that?
Well, we do. I mean, I have a fantastic legal assistant, so that helps. And we got fortunate. We've had some bad luck with that in the past. We had one legal assistant who was amazing for years, and then she went off to greener pastures. She didn't love family law. She wanted to go back to criminal law. The opportunity happened, but that was a little over a year ago. And we kind of had some trial and error with finding the right person, but we've got somebody who is just fantastic right now. So that helps considerably is to have good assistance, good help in terms of, the managing the cases and doing what a legal assistant does and doing it well. So, that's helpful. That takes a lot of that stress off right away. And I can speak to that having been in a situation where that was not the case. And the stress level just skyrockets because suddenly then you are responsible for all of your scheduling and you're not getting that support from your legal assistant. And so it is fantastic to have a good legal assistant. It is also really helpful just in terms of having good, case management software, good, we keep each other kind of in check. We've got our shared calendars. We know where everybody is all the time. And then just learning how to manage our schedules in a way that it's like, I'm not going to do trials, back to back, even maybe 2 weeks apart is pushing it when it comes to having a trial. And we don't have trials that often. I know that's in general litigation and also family law, like trials are rare, but when they happen, and you go all in. And so we're not scheduling trials back to back. We're not, scheduling major things right after or before trials either. I mean, just kind of, and it doesn't all focus around trials. We also have like all day mediations, or we have, days where we have to testify on behalf of a child, or, something like that. And so we're doing that as well. But trying to just manage and schedule, being mindful of what our time looks like, but also just maintaining that balance, being able to maintain that in a way where I've got children, I've got a family, we've got dogs, we've got a house, all the school plays, all the appointments, everything else that's going on, being able to manage that too. And I actually think that is what helps reduce the stress ultimately. The reason I'm doing all of this is for my family. It's also to help support the community and everything, but it's really for fulfillment, my family, and that sort of thing. Maintaining like what the big picture is, like, what is my why? Why am I doing this? What am I really doing this for? And remembering that a big part of why I decided to open my own firm as opposed to working for somebody again is being in charge of my schedule, being in charge of my time off in the small solo and small firm practice. Like, how much we work is how much we earn. Like, that's just how it is. But managing that with, I have to be out for this time and this time because I have my kids, school play, or she has to get to play practice, or we've got piano lessons or doctor's appointments or whatever. Being able to just set that, it's on my calendar. Don't schedule me at this time. Whereas when you work for somebody, they often manage your calendar, and that's tough. They also manage your time off, and you have to account for that. And we don't have to do that. It's kind of wonderful.
Right. There's no PTO accrual.
Not for us.
Keep track of that for yourselves. When you're an employee, you can have a terrible boss, or you can have a great boss who is proactive about making sure that you're maintaining balance.
Yes.
But you don't have either when you're running things yourself. So you have to be proactive about doing it, because nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
And clients have demands. And if you aren't proactive about maintaining the balance for yourself, it won't happen.
Exactly. And it's kind of difficult. I think I made it sound very easy, but it's not. There are times, especially when you get into it, when you're in the zone, where you could just work. I feel like I answer emails. The vast majority of my day is just answering emails. I'm drafting things, calling people. I'm on the phone a lot. And when you're in the zone and you're really working, you could just keep going. And so there have to be times where like, oh, no, I need to stop. Like, I need to be done. It's okay to be done. This really can wait, because there are parts inside of me that are like, you have to get this done right now. And sometimes those are real deadlines. A lot of times they're not. A lot of times it's just like, oh crap, like I have this, I got to do,
Totally.
I got to, so it's a learning process. It's not always easy to maintain that. Sometimes it goes the other direction. Sometimes I have a lot of family obligations and I have to be like, all right, I hate to do it, but I got to pull back because I have to focus on the work right now. So, figuring that out, I think, is a constant.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny. What you said made me think of like when you're in litigation, if you're a fight or flight, if you're a fight type of person in the fight or flight paradigm, then little things seem urgent even when they're not.
Oh, sure.
I have to fight this out right now.
Yes.
So yeah, you need the judgment, I guess, to discern. So you all staffed up right away. It was the two of you. You have your husband doing operations and a legal assistant, and it sounds like you did that right away.
Yeah. So we did a lot of things kind of just carry over from what we were doing. So we were very fortunate to be able to bring over our client base. We were also able to bring over our practice management software. We were able to export almost all of the data. There were a couple things that couldn't move over. We were able to do all of that. And so we were able to fully maintain our client files for the existing clients. We had to go through some paperwork where they had to give permission for my previous firm to be able to move over their trust account money and things like that. Right. But we even started with a relatively healthy trust account because we had all of these clients who still had funds. And so We were able to move that over relatively seamlessly. And then we've got a lot of new cases too. In the 5 months that we've been open, we're almost at half and half now in terms of the older versus the newer cases and clients. So we were able to bring all of that over. We did carry over the legal assistant who was with us. She ended up not working out for various reasons. And so we had to hire a new one, but we had to learn how to do that too. That's, it's tricky, but we had to learn, how do you let someone go? How do you hire somebody? What processes do you do? We had to learn about payroll. We had to learn about taxes and the various things that go into that. I mean, there's a lot, but yes. So we did come in with staff and we were able to, that was a pretty seamless transition as well in terms of timing. And then, we've got my husband on contract and then we've just got us, and we're managing.
Yeah.
Again, we just sat down today to run our reports from the end of November because we usually do that at the end of the month, but with the holidays, that timing didn't work out. So we did that today. And we're set up as an S Corp. So we've got ourselves on salary and, figuring all that out as well and making sure there's money in the account for bills and all those things. Fairly seamless. We definitely ran into some glitches along the way, but we brought everybody who had existing cases. We stayed at their previous billing rate. And then we set our billing rate based on what we just had been billing previously, but we raised that pretty quickly. It just became very apparent that we could still maintain a pretty competitive billing rate and increase that. That also helps with being able to be more selective in which cases we take and things like that, which helps with the stress level too.
Absolutely. Okay, so technology for payroll, do you use something like Gusto or
Yes,
QuickBooks?
that we use Gusto and it works great.
Gusto?
It
Yeah.
works fantastic for us. We don't have
Yeah,
a lot, to do with it. So
when I was a solo as an S corp, I used it, and all the way through now, it's been 11 years and counting. It's still working great for us. I really like that.
It works fantastic.
I think people will be intrigued by the idea of you taking cases with you. One thing that people might not realize is that every jurisdiction is different, but generally speaking, consumers have a right to choose their own counsel.
And they
which
do.
means that we can't have a non-solicit of clients as a law firm that prevents lawyers from taking clients with them. Other types of businesses can do that as a matter of consumer protection. We generally can't do that in the law, and that's
We're not
good
allowed to.
for not only for consumers, but for people starting law firms. Tell us anything you'd like to share with our listeners about the process of leaving a firm and taking cases with you and managing that relationship and all that.
Well, it's interesting because our actual location is right next door, like in the same building. We are one door down from Franklin Law Office, which is our firm. So we did end up purchasing the suite that we're in. They were both owned by Franklin at the time. So we're in the same space. We still see each other in the hallways. The owner of the firm next door, she's got puppies. We go in there and play with the puppies sometimes. We get along okay in terms of that. And unfortunately, sometimes our mail is still getting crossed a little bit. So we'll get that. And we talk to the people over there still. Because of the way our contract was written, it was relatively, and again, I say relatively because it wasn't completely perfect, but it was relatively seamless in terms of how that worked. So we were able to get our paper files, get everything. We did have to have some meetings about okay, furniture. Okay, since we were staying in the space, we had to do the software thing. And there was permissions that had to be granted on their side to be able to allow access to the information. There were provisions that we put, we had some documents that we had signed, that we weren't going to take anything that wasn't family law because family law was all we were doing over there. We were only going to take our cases. We weren't going to take any information or materials that weren't related to the type of work because they do other things over there too. So, but we didn't touch that stuff. And so, but we kind of had to set all that out, make sure everyone was on the same page about what that looked like. And then it was just
because trade secrets are protectable.
Yes.
Even though, maybe even clients have a right to counsel. So
They do.
don't take this podcast as legal advice on
Oh,
that. They're
absolutely
finer
not.
details.
But
Yeah.
no, yeah, we were very much in agreement that we weren't going to touch any of like the work comp or other things that we don't do and never really were involved in. So, that was important. Yeah.
So, am I understanding correctly that you bought the space from Franklin Law, your former employer?
We did. We purchased it. It was already owned, and there's a lot to like about where we're located, within a few minutes walking distance from the courthouse, good parking. It's downtown, which very centrally located in town for people to access, pretty easy to find, comfortable. It's a building it's sort of a condo situation. It's got like a quarters. It's got like an association, like kind of an HOA, but more of a building association. We pay dues and things like that, but there's like a common area, bathrooms, et cetera, maintenance, all things that we kind of all are responsible for. And so we did make that decision to purchase. And that was not, I mean, there's a big cost up front. We were fortunate in being able to get some loans on that. But yeah, and that's something that we're building up to getting those paid as well so that we are good there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
So
you're
we did.
building up equity as you do it. That's very cool.
Exactly.
So back to the choice of counsel issue. There's sort of a standard
Yeah.
way of leading. The standard way of leaving a law firm is sort of similar to passing a note to your crush in middle school or something.
It's exactly what it was. Do you
Right?
like me?
Where
Check
it's like,
here.
will you
Yes.
go out with me?
Yeah.
Check no, or what maybe. It's
That
the
is.
same thing. You give to your clients,
Yep.
I'm leaving the firm. Check one. Do you want to stay with the firm
Yes.
or do you want to go with me or do you want to go find somebody
Go with
else?
somebody else. Exactly. And we had that. It was interesting. We had to write that letter because it was like a little letter, and it literally had the check boxes, like choose an option. You come with me, you stay here, or you take your file, you go somewhere else. And we had to put in there though, like, please note, nobody else at this firm does family law. Like we had to you had to tell people
Oh,
that because nobody else was going to be there to like take that case. Now, I
uh-huh.
suppose technically they could have still insisted they wanted to stay there, but it wouldn't have made sense. And nobody did that. So I think I had two people who said, we're so close to being done. I think we're good. And they chose to
Mm,
just go on their own. I think there were quite a few that I tried to get done, get finished before we left, so we didn't have to make that decision one way or the other. And then everybody else decided to come along. So I think I had like one or two where I never heard anything, but they didn't have money in trust, so it wasn't quite as tricky to deal with that.
okay. Yeah. And then you didn't hear from them, but then it does become the responsibility of the firm that you left to try to close that file appropriately, of
Yes.
course. Okay, so any advice for somebody who's thinking of taking the leap and is gathering up their courage to have that conversation with their present employer?
We were fortunate again because we're a contract. It was basically whenever the time comes, there was a good severable, like we could terminate based on X, Y, and Z and within this time period. And so we did. But employers, I'm trying to think, because when I left my Wichita State, which was my employer before moving into private practice, I just at that point, I had to make the decision that working in the public sector in that particular role as the Title IX coordinator was not quite the job I had signed up for at the beginning. And so the role had changed enough that I had to make that call. Had some meetings with the owner of the firm that we were with and ended up deciding. And I just submitted a letter of resignation, but it was a leap. That was actually much more terrifying, I think, than opening this, because again, we already kind of knew what we were doing a little bit at this point. But moving into, essentially, I still operated, I had my own Sara Zafar LLC, Sara Zafar Law, I think LLC. That was my business essentially, so I could still operate as an S Corp, as an independent contractor. And that took some
Right.
work with my accountant to figure that out. But what I'm saying is that it was much more scary because I was moving from having always worked for somebody, and in a public sector, you've got benefits, the kind of jobs that you don't really take home with you unless you absolutely have to, or when it was COVID and
Hmm.
didn't have a choice. But, we had to decide. And it was the same for my law partner who had been with legal services the entire time since she had graduated. So we were 15 years
Mm,
out at that point and just figuring out like, oh, okay, what are we doing here? And gosh, that's just terrifying. Are we going to be able to make enough? Are we going to have enough work? Are we going to? And as it turns out, we had enough work. We had more than enough
yeah.
work. And so we were like, oh, okay, yes, we can do this. Yes, when it came time to open our own. But it was a little scary the first like 4 or 5 months out of being in the public, working for the public service or public interest, and now coming into private practice and being like, it's happening. Like, look what's happening, and we're
Hmm.
we're making a living and we're doing the work, and it's yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, yeah,
So much of building a practice is just about meeting demand. It's very simple principle, supply and demand. And I think sometimes when people aren't able to get the business that they want, it's because their practice area just simply doesn't have enough
mm,
demand for it.
sure,
But you saw the demand and you met it.
yeah. And I've talked with other attorneys who focus more on estates and probate, that kind of thing, or people who do more kind of like business contracts, that kind of thing. And it's doable. I mean, you can do it, but the market is different. So I think it's very much going to be dependent on the demand, which is something, if you're looking to do this, I would definitely talk to other attorneys who do it, if assuming you have the kind of friendly climate where you can do that kind of thing, where you can just sit
Hmm.
down and have that conversation, pick their brains, get a sense one way or another of like what that market is and what you need to do to maintain that. Because yeah, I mean, we're fortunate, unfortunately, that family law is always, there's always a need. People who need to, figure out their custody, figure out their child support, figure out, divorces,
Right.
separation of all the things, right? So there are gonna always, I mean, that's just a need. And that's not really ever going to go away. Now, the demands have definitely skyrocketed in the last few years. So I don't know what it's going to look like later. But there are certain other areas where the work is going to be more kind of few and far between as far as what kinds of cases you get or referrals for those kinds of cases. There are certain areas that people kind of keep that stuff close to their chest and don't want to refer it out because they want to be the only one in town who does whatever it is. And so that happens too, but not in family law. Like we don't have that issue in family law as much. There are people who maybe they specialize in like military division of assets, and that's a whole specialized area. People who just do qualified domestic relations orders for division of retirement or things like that, or there's people who do really solid business valuation, things like that. So because that's you own a business as part of your marriage, it's an asset. So there's lots of areas where there are people who I can think of right off the top of my head. It's like, that's the person I'll go to for
Right.
that. Our area, we focus a lot on domestic violence, sexual assault, advocacy and awareness, and also working and supporting clients in those types of situations. So, we do get a lot of those kinds of referrals from people too. So it's just whatever that specialty is within family law to kind of make yourself stand out a little bit. But I would definitely tell
Hmm.
anybody who is thinking about this, I mean, do your homework. We did so much homework and research before deciding to do this, knowing, just started making lists. I mean, here's all the things you need to have. You need to have payroll. We need to have do we need a bookkeeper? Do we need an accountant? You have to have a bank account because you have to, do we go local?
Right.
Do we go big? Like all the things, think about all
Right.
of those kinds of things. We ended up going local because it's really helpful to have somebody I can just like call or email right away and get a response when we have some kind of an issue.
On that bank account point,
Yes.
I went local at first as well. And what's really important is that whether you go local or national, and we did eventually switch
Mhm.
to national so that we could have uh, IOLTA accounts in multiple
Yeah.
states, but What is really important is that they understand law firm trust accounts.
Oh my gosh, yes. So the bank that we chose didn't have IOLTA, like, because that's the thing they have to go through. They have to get set up with the state to do that, basically. They had it in the past, I guess, but didn't. And we were like, well, we really like you for all these reasons, but we really want it to be an IOLTA. Now, you're not required in Kansas. It doesn't have to be interest on lawyer trust account, IOLTA account. But because we come from the legal services, public interest type work, that's close to our hearts. And a lot of those supported programs are things that we did. And so we absolutely were like, yes, that money needs to go back to those funds. But yes, the bank has to understand it. And you got to have somebody who has, it's helpful if the bank has a business division or something where there's somebody there who specializes
Right.
in that. And that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, they might have to actually learn it for you. But for
Yeah.
people who don't know, IOLTA accounts, or in Colorado, we call them COLTAF accounts,
Mhm.
generally the beauty of them is the interest, you're holding client money in there. Usually, whether it's from a settlement or it's like a retainer they've paid you that you're going to bill from that amount. But the interest that's earned on those funds legal aid in your state, generally speaking, legal services. So it's a very cool thing.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, there's all the rules. If you're going to start a law firm, you need to have at least two bank accounts. You've got to have your trust account, and then you have to have like an operations. And some people go beyond that and they have operations and they have other types of accounts, but you must at least have those two. You cannot, I mean, they drill this into you in professional responsibility classes, ethics classes. You cannot commingle client funds with operations or other, client funds are very heavily guarded. Like they stay where they are. We have to reconcile our accounts three different ways every month to make sure that everything, that interest kind of throws that off a little bit, but we have
Yeah.
to make sure that those are correct and that those are tight like every month, because you can't have any commingling. And that is like a big no.
Absolutely. Okay, so self-serving for me because I'm curious as well. Let's talk about tech. Okay, dream wish list is are there any roadblocks in your practice or things that are difficult that you wish tech could do for you?
I think both my law partner and I can't speak for her because she's not here, but we've had a lot of conversations, are a little bit skeptical yet of things of AI and how that's going in. And not because, like, I recognize that it's a tool, it's very helpful. It is actually really helpful in like note taking and things like that, like recording what was actually said, recording it, summarizing it, that kind of thing is very helpful. But we are hesitant to have things that require a human brain, human thoughts, the personal touch become automated. And we are seeing that. So when we have a
Yeah.
lot of pro se litigants, even not pro se litigants, but especially when they're representing themselves, pro se, basically we are seeing so much AI generated, and you can tell. I don't know what it is about it, but you can tell when something is AI, right?
AI
Maybe
slop.
yeah, and I don't, I was gonna not use that term, but yes, I mean there's a cadence to it that is very AI specific. And I don't know if AI is going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to tell anymore, but right now you can tell. And because of that, I can tell when something I'm getting from another party or even another attorney. Most of the time we're still writing this stuff ourselves, but you can kind of just tell. And it just makes me look extra carefully at it, which is not a bad thing. We're a little skeptical there. But in terms of automation, our payroll's automated. If we could get to the point where we need a bookkeeper, or maybe like if there was a way to automate that, but I'm not sure if I would trust it. Anything that could be, what would I love to be automated? I would love to be able to have a system that scanned all our old stuff without us having to like think too hard about it. It helps to upload as much of that as you go as possible, but there's a lot of paper, we get, because of the work we do, we get a lot of paper. And so, being able to digitize everything really easily would be nice. The slog of having to go through and close the paper files and just that kind of thing. If there was a way to make that easier, sure, that would be fantastic. But overall, I get nervous about AI and that sort of thing becoming a part of our, and I know it's coming. I can't do anything about it, but it does. There's something about it that I don't know if AI is ready yet to do that because I'm seeing a
Yeah.
lot of things that are not quite right. So,
Oh, I agree completely. And I think where it is right now is like, yeah, a tool or an assistant. It's not a replacement for a lawyer brain.
no,
I agree with you on that. It's just not there yet. Like you said, maybe someday. And I think what will be nice is if it can really increase access to a higher quality of legal services, which may or may not be good for our businesses, but the people who will harness it effectively for consumers will wind up being the winners probably. But
yes.
it
And
certainly has a
there's a
long way to
way.
go.
I'm sure we'll get there. And I'm not like completely anti AI. I just like I'm always a little more like, this is AI. Eh, you know.
If you've got a pro se litigant, you're gonna be seeing some AI.
Oh
Or
yes.
like
Oh yes. It's happening.
any parting advice for somebody thinking about starting their own law firm?
I'm a big proponent of take the leap because even if you, I don't know, like it feels so final every time we make these big decisions. But I have, as you read at the beginning, bumped around quite a bit in my path to being here. And any decision you make, I mean, it's always hard to transition in and out of new work environments, things like that, but you can. And if it's not working, you can go back there, at least around here. I mean, there's always going to be a firm or something where you can choose to go back, or some other type of work or career path or whatever. You're never stuck in just your one lane. 40-year career attorneys who decide to try to do something else, or maybe they're done with law but they're not done working, and so they transition. I've got friends who are attorneys who go into like more of the banking side or things like that. I know one attorney who was solo for 25 years, maybe longer. And then she went with a firm and now she's a partner in a firm. You are never stuck. You can go back and forth between the two. And it feels a little crazy sometimes. It feels a little scary, but it's very doable. And nowadays, the days of working in one job for the same job for your entire career and then retiring, I mean, people are not doing that anymore in the ways that they used to. And so it's not so unusual to have a resume where you bounced around a little bit from place to place. Every one of my career stops has led to the next one. So, I think that there's a very natural progression in that. And I think that that is something that people should just consider as like, it's not necessarily going to look bad if you have several, different types of employment. And I've known attorneys who go back and forth. They have a solo practice, but they, sometimes they contract with another firm and they're of counsel there. Sometimes they don't. And, just the flexibility is there if you're willing to kind of take some of the risks that go along with that. For me, I say do it. The freedom and autonomy of just being able to own your own firm, be your own boss, make your own rules is unmatched. I mean, there's nothing else like it. And I highly recommend to a lot of people. Maybe not everybody. If you need benefits, that's kind of the one downside. The benefits get a little more expensive when you're a small firm. But other than that, I
Yeah.
think it's highly recommended.
Yeah, that just becomes part of the budget. All right. Well, wonderful, uplifting words to end our show today. Thank you.
Good.
Best place to find you, I assume, is at campbellsafar.com.
Yes, you can. I mean, we have a contact form on our website. That's the easiest way to do that. I'm also on social media. Now, I'm on Instagram. Everything is just my name, like first and last name, but it is a way to reach me. I would say the best way, if you really want to reach me, is just to throw a note into our contact form and it will get to me.
CAMPBELLZAFAR.com.
Yes.
Which is
And
spelled
check it out. It's beautiful. Our pictures and our colors. I love going to our website.
It looks great. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you for having me. This was fun.